I remember the exact moment I decided to open a bakery. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. The air was thick with the smell of roast chicken and a quiet, heavy judgment. My hands were shaking under the table. I took a deep breath and finally told them my plan. My brother, Tom, laughed so hard he snorted, almost choking on his food. "A bakery," he said, wiping fake tears from his eyes. "That's a cute little dream, Elise. But let's be real, it's not a real business." The word cute felt like a sharp slap. It wasn't just doubt, it was a dismissal of everything I was. My mom didn't even look at me. She just sighed a heavy, disappointed sigh and started clearing the plates, the clatter sounding like a final verdict. That night, I cried so hard my pillow was soaked. But then I got angry. I opened a fresh notebook, and with a hand that still trembled, I wrote business plan at the top of the very first page. After that night, the doubt wasn't just background noise. It was a constant, active campaign against my confidence. My dad didn't just offer me his old lawnmower. He dragged it onto my driveway unannounced. "I saved this for you," he said, not meeting my eyes. "At least you can start a mowing service on the side when this bakery thing fails." It's honest work. My mom's secretarial job clippings became a daily ritual. She'd hand them to me with a tight smile. "Just in case, dear," she'd say. A steady paycheck is nothing to sneeze at. They truly believed they were saving me from myself. But every clipped ad, every pitying look, felt like another brick in a wall being built between us. Behind that wall, I was completely alone, with only my own stubborn hope to keep me warm. Finding the storefront felt like finding a life raft. It was on a quiet, almost forgotten street, with a cracked front window and an oven from another century. But the second I stepped inside, the dusty, sunlit space felt like a sanctuary. It felt like mine. I spent my entire life savings, every dollar I'd scrimped and saved for years on the deposit and the most basic repairs. I remember sitting on the gritty, cold floor after the bank transfer cleared, watching dust motes dance in the light. The silence was overwhelming. A thrill of pure, undiluted terror shot through me. I had burned my ships. There was no safety net, no going back to my old life. I was all in. Naming my bakery the Daily Loaf felt right. It was simple and honest, just like the bread I wanted to create. I wanted to make the simple, daily bread that makes life better, the kind that fills a home with warmth. I designed the logo myself, a single, elegant wheat stalk. Painting it on the clean, repaired front window was a sacred act. Every smooth stroke of the brush was a quiet declaration of war against all the doubt and dismissal. In that moment, I wasn't just Elise, the daughter who never quite measured up. I was Elise, a business owner. I was terrified, but I was also ready to fight for this tiny piece of my future. The night before the grand opening, anxiety buzzed under my skin like a live wire. I had baked a dozen test batches of my signature sunrise bun, a beautiful, golden swirl of orange zest and sweet cinnamon. My entire tiny apartment smelled of sugar and hope and desperate prayer. I must have checked my phone 100 times. A part of me, a foolish, hopeful part, kept waiting for a good luck text from my family. The screen stayed stubbornly dark and silent. The silence in my apartment was a physical weight, a heavy blanket of disappointment I had to physically shrug off my shoulders. I was entirely on my own. Opening day was a blur of forced smiles and nervous introductions. A handful of curious neighbors wandered in, but by noon, the rush was over. I stood behind a counter that was still far too full of unsold pastries, and my heart sank into my shoes. Then I saw a familiar figure outside. It was Tom. He didn't come in. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, and looked through the window with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it pity? Amusement? He saw me looking, gave me a small, dismissive wave, and then turned and walked away without a second glance. The message was clear. I was a spectacle. I fled to the back room, leaning against the cool wall, taking deep, ragged breaths to stop the hot tears of humiliation from falling. The first few months were a brutal, unending lesson in reality. Some days, I made just enough money to cover the cost of that day's ingredients. Most days, I did not. I lived on leftover, day-old bread and a fragile thread of prayer. I learned to unclog the sink with a coat hanger and to patch a leaking pipe with electrical tape. I learned to smile brightly while sweet-talking my flour supplier, my voice shaking as I begged for one more week to pay my bill. I was always exhausted, and I was so poor that a single unexpected expense could have ruined me. But for the first time in my life, I was truly, deeply proud. Every single customer who returned and asked for me by name felt like a victory I celebrated alone in the quiet of the empty bakery. My first big break came from an unexpected angel. Mrs. Gable, the stern but kind owner of the town's most popular bed and breakfast, came in one rainy Tuesday. She bought one of everything, not saying much. The next morning, she was back before I'd even finished unlocking the door. Her eyes were wide, and she was actually smiling. "These are incredible," she said, her voice full of genuine wonder. "I haven't tasted a croissant like this since I was in Paris." She then placed a standing order for 24 pastries every single morning. It was my first steady contract. That small stack of order forms felt heavier and more valuable than any gold. It was proof. A sign that I wasn't crazy, that my dream had merit. With Mrs. Gable's glowing endorsement, my little bakery began to find its footing. The local paper did a small feature on me, calling me the new girl baker with an old-world touch. Slowly, lines started to form on Saturday mornings. The sound of the bell over the door, which once filled me with dread, became my favorite sound in the world. It was the sound of hope. I was able to hire my first employee, a quiet high school kid named Jake who was eager to learn and didn't know my family's history. For the first time, I dared to let a tiny, hopeful thought enter my mind. Maybe, just maybe, I could really make this work. My small success, however, did nothing to change my family's opinion. If anything, it made them more vocal. At my cousin's birthday party, my aunt asked in a syrupy voice, "And how is your little muffin shop doing, dear?" Before I could even form a word, Tom cut in loudly, drawing the attention of everyone around us. "She's still playing shopkeeper," he announced with a familiar, mocking smirk. "It's a cute hobby, keeps her off the streets. But she'll come to her senses and get a real job soon enough." The room got quiet. I felt my face burn with a fresh wave of shame. I didn't argue. I just forced a smile and nodded. Because tucked inside my purse was a contract from Fresh Mart that I was too terrified to sign. A secret they knew nothing about. The contract was from Fresh Mart, the biggest grocery store chain in our county. Their head buyer, a serious woman in a sharp suit, had secretly come in and tasted my sunrise buns. She tracked me down and offered me a deal to stock them in all 5 of their local locations. The order was massive, a truly life-changing amount of money and exposure. But my heart sank. It meant I had to scale up my baking to an industrial level. I would need a bigger kitchen, more staff, and equipment I couldn't afford. The fear of this enormous step, of failing on such a public stage, was a cold knot in my stomach. It was almost enough to make me say no. I spent a whole week with that Fresh Mart contract sitting on my kitchen table, taunting me. I knew this was the ultimate make-or-break moment. Saying no meant staying small, safe, and ultimately, proving my family right. Saying yes meant risking everything I had painfully built on a much bigger, more dangerous stage. I thought about Tom's smug smirk at the party. I heard his voice in my head, saying, "Cute hobby." The anger that rose up in me was clean and sharp. It cut through the fear. I knew, deep in my bones, that I had to try. With a hand that shook only slightly, I signed the paper. The scan of the document seemed to take forever. I took the deepest breath of my life and hit send. There was no going back. The die was cast. Fulfilling the Fresh Mart order was a descent into a new kind of chaos. It meant working 20-hour days every day. I rented a small, grim commercial kitchen space for the night shifts. The constant hum of the industrial mixers became the soundtrack to my life. I hired 2 more part-time helpers, but I was still the one carrying the weight. I was now a manager, a production planner, a head baker, and a quality control manager all at once. The exhaustion was so deep it felt like a physical ache. One night, the world just went black. I woke up with my face pressed into a soft bag of flour, my body screaming in protest. But the next morning, I walked into a Fresh Mart and saw my beautiful sunrise buns sitting proudly on their shelf. That sight gave me a new, fierce burst of energy. I was doing it. The Fresh Mart deal was a runaway success. My buns and breads sold out faster than the stores could restock them. The phone, which had been so quiet for so long, started ringing nonstop. First, it was the manager of the local coffee bean chain. They wanted my hearth loaf for all their breakfast sandwiches. A week later, the director of the hospital cafeteria called, wanting pastries for their staff and visitors. It was surreal. My one little bakery on a quiet street was now quietly supplying the entire town. My original shop was becoming just the public face, the beloved heart of a growing operation that was still my secret. My family, stuck in their own world, had no idea. I made a conscious decision then to keep my expansion a complete secret from my family. I wanted to see how long it would take for them to notice the empire I was building right under their noses. It became my own private, deeply satisfying game. I would sit through family dinners, listening to Tom and my dad talk about their important business deals and stable careers. I would nod along as my mom fretted about my future. All the while, I knew that my name was stamped on the packaging of products in every single grocery store and coffee shop they frequented. The irony was so delicious it was almost painful. I just smiled softly and passed the potatoes. My secret almost exploded one Sunday afternoon. My mom was over for coffee, and she was raving about these absolutely divine buns she kept buying from Fresh Mart. "You have to try one, ELISE," she said, holding one up. Its distinctive, swirled shape was unmistakable. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure she could hear it. I held my breath, waiting for her to turn the package over. But she just took a bite, blissfully unaware. She never saw the Daily Loaf logo stamped proudly on the back. She had no idea she was holding my dream, my sweat, my victory, right there in her hand. She just thought it was a really good bun from some faceless factory. The demand quickly outgrew my rented night kitchen. I was facing my biggest, most terrifying decision yet. I would build my own small bakery factory. I found a vacant, overgrown plot of land on the edge of town, a blank slate for my future. Using every penny of profit from my wholesale deals, I walked into the bank and secured a business loan. The meeting was terrifying. Signing those papers made my hand cramp. But in that moment, I was no longer just a baker with a shop. I was ELISE Miller, founder and CEO, building her own headquarters. The fear was immense, but the pride was bigger. The day they broke ground on my new building, I drove out to the empty field alone and just sat in my car. I watched as the huge yellow bulldozers roared to life, their metal jaws biting into the earth, pushing the first piles of dirt. I thought about every single time I'd been called cute, every time I was patted on the head and called a hobbyist. Now, I was literally moving mountains of earth to build my future. The roar of the engines was the sound of my ambition. I took a picture of the chaotic, muddy site and saved it as my phone's background. It was my daily reminder that I was building something they said was impossible. My new facility was a complete and total game changer. The air was always warm and smelled of yeast and sugar. With my new massive, gleaming ovens, I could produce thousands of units a day without breaking a sweat. I hired a small office staff to handle the flood of orders and invoices. The cute little bakery was now a real, legitimate company. We had a payroll, health insurance, and our own fleet of small distribution vans with my Wheatstock logo on the side. The feeling of walking onto my own spotless, humming production floor every morning was a pride so profound I could never find the words to describe it. Then, the town council made their announcement. They were giving a Local Business Innovator Award. When I saw the email, I had to read it 3 times. To my complete and total shock, I was nominated. The announcement was going to be in the local paper. This was it. The curtain was about to be pulled back. The secret I had guarded so jealously was going to be blown wide open for everyone to see. I bought a copy of the paper from the stand and stared at my name printed there in black and white. I wondered if my family would finally see it, or if, out of habit, they would just skip over that part of the paper like they always skipped over my dreams. The night of the award ceremony, I put on my best suit, a simple black one that was, for once, completely free of any flour dust. I walked into the crowded town hall, my knees trembling so badly I thought I might fall. I scanned the room, and my breath caught in my throat. There they were. My entire family was sitting together in the middle of the audience. They had come to see who would win, still completely oblivious that it was me. I saw the confusion on their faces as I walked away from them, toward the front of the room. It was a slow dawning confusion that I knew was about to turn into absolute, jaw-dropping shock. The mayor gave a long, winding speech about perseverance, innovation, and community impact. He spoke about a local bakery that started as a single, struggling storefront. He detailed how, through sheer determination, it now supplied nearly every major food vendor in the entire county. He still hadn't said my name. I clutched my hands together in my lap, my knuckles white. The anticipation was agony. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "And the winner of this year's Local Business Innovator Award is Elise Miller of the Daily Loaf." The room erupted in applause. I looked directly at my family as I stood up. Tom's mouth was hanging wide open in a perfect, stunned circle of disbelief. My mother's hand was frozen over her heart. The fallout in the moments after the ceremony was immediate and mostly silent. My family gathered around me like a group of lost, shy children. No one knew what to say. The air was thick with their shame. My mom was the first to find her voice. "Elise, all those stores, that was you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, cracking with emotion. All this time, Tom just stood there, staring at the heavy, crystal award in my hands as if it were a ghost. He couldn't even look me in the eye. The grand, loud victory I had always fantasized about felt quiet and, strangely, a little sad. I looked at their shocked faces and realized they hadn't been evil villains. They had just been blind, and their blindness had cost us all. About a week later, Tom showed up at the secured door of my bakery factory. He didn't smirk. He didn't make a joke. He just looked tired, older, and completely serious. "I owe you an apology," he said, his gaze fixed on the clean, polished floor. "A huge one. I was a total jerk. I never believed in you, not for a second. I was completely, 100% wrong." He admitted that seeing my name on products in every store, and then seeing me win that award, had been the most humbling experience of his life. It wasn't the explosive, satisfying fight I had sometimes imagined. But his honest, quiet, and deeply felt apology was worth infinitely more. I realized then that I didn't need their approval anymore. I had already proven everything to myself. But getting their genuine respect, that was the final, sweetest reward I never knew I wanted. Now, at family dinners, they listen when I talk. They ask me for business advice. My mom doesn't hide secretarial job ads anymore. Instead, she brags to her friends about her daughter, the entrepreneur. The cute little bakery was gone forever. In its place was a thriving business I built with my own two tired, flour-dusted hands. It was a business that bore my name in every store in town. And that was a success story, written in bread and perseverance, that no one could ever take away from me. So I'll leave you with this one question. What dream are you protecting from the laughter of others? Tell me one small step you're taking in the comments. Your quiet perseverance might be the very thing that gives someone else the courage to begin.